Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 125 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host. With me, as always, is the stalwart Stephen Bishop, as well as the awesome Julie Connolly.
Hello.
Tonight on the phone via Skype, we have the incredible former officer Eddie Craig. And we will be talking. We had a video that posted this last week that I posted up, as I'm prone to do like numerous times a day in the Facebook group, just blast people with information. But we had a video that popped up about this guy that got pulled over and read the police the riot act about his rights. Like, you just stood up for his rights and was like, listen, I don't have to provide you a driver's license. I don't
It's
have
amazing
to do
the
this.
stuff he was able to quote.
Oh, yeah, and it was great. He did a good job, but there were some things that he missed out on, and that's what Eddie's going to get into. And the reason why I had him on is he actually has a class that he does that teaches you this. He has a script that you should read to the police. And we're going to talk about the beginning of that script, where that came from, why he started making it, and why he started giving this information to people right after this. And this message, folks, I want to tell you right now, is brought to you by our new sponsor, Hops and Grain Brewing. Thank you so much, Hops and Grain. We love you. We drink, and whenever we had the owner in here,
I'm having a Zoe right now.
I am enjoying. We're all enjoying the Zoe. And whenever we had him in, we let him know that, or at least I did. Since I found Hops and Grain, I've had at least a 6-pack of it in the fridge at all times.
Well, it's like it was always a common thing in our studio.
It was. So it was a natural marriage for us, not just for the 100th episode, but whenever we started going, hey, we need a studio beer sponsor. Like, we need somebody to sponsor that we can get behind, a beer that we can enjoy, a beer that we can tell people to enjoy, that we believe in. They've got the sustainable brewing process. You know, they are locally based. Good God, they turn all of their waste material into like dog biscuits and sell it.
Exactly.
It's great.
Awesome.
It's great. So I'm all about them. I love them. They actually just released their dispensary IPA. I got a chance to try some of that. That was pretty fantastic. But it's in limited run in cans, so go out and get it while you can. It's like I'm married to a comedian or something, right? So seriously, thank you so much, Hops and Grain. We love you. We love you, and we will keep on keeping on with the great brews that you bring us. Now, on to our guest. Welcome, Eddie Craig. How are you doing this evening?
I'm great. How are y'all?
Doing fantastic.
Good.
We had a couple minutes to kind of all get an idea here of where the show was going this evening, stuff like that. As we start off the show and bring you on, I would like you to, just like I did with the co-host here who had not met you previously, tell our listeners who you are, what caused you to come up with this script, this course, and give us a little bit of your history and story here, Eddie.
Well, my name is Eddie Craig. I have appeared both on InfoWars and I'm a regular co-host on Rule of Law Radio. And I have a Monday night show where I talk about legal issues dealing with traffic, felony arrest, misdemeanor arrest, how to handle yourself at trial, and so on and so forth. I teach a series of classes, or did teach a series of classes down at Brave New Books before it closed, on legal defense self-help, how to go to court without an attorney and still win your case. And I'm pretty much have to become a jack of all trades in all these things. I run a legal blog called taooflaw.wordpress.com, where I post legal articles and white papers on some of the legal issues that we are facing in this country today, and the idiocy that the justice system plays off on us by keeping us ignorant of how the law works and how they abuse it.
Yeah.
So basically, that's pretty much what I do. I spend my entire day saving other people's burnt bacon is basically what it is.
Yeah. And, I remember whenever I did work with Alex and had you on the show, just my mind was floored. And I was in studio at Nightly News. I remember you did that the same day, and it was just like, oh my God, like I could not absorb enough of the information. And I've never had a chance to take your class. You're talking about doing an online university, stuff like that. So, just the fact that you put all of this together to begin with. Now, you spent some time as an officer of the law. What was it that made you leave service?
Well, I was a deputy sheriff working the jail over in Nacogdoches County, where I'm from. I was there sometime between 6 and 9 months. And I worked my butt off while I was there to learn everything I could, because when I first joined law enforcement, my goal was to become a Texas Ranger. I'd idolized the Texas Rangers ever since I was a kid, and that's what I wanted to be. So when I got done with my first stint in the military, I went and applied for working down at the Sheriff's Department to get a leg up and get the experience going, and got hired. Worked the jail anywhere from 5 to 6 nights a week, anytime from 12-hour shifts to sometimes 36-hour shifts. And when I wasn't out walking the floor, I was studying every manual, procedure, and statute book they had available. The reason that I was fired from that job was that I was working there one night, and the duty sergeant, my supervisor at the time, messed up our booking computer system. We only had one computer for booking people in that were placed under arrest and brought into the jail.
Oh, nice.
And he was misappropriating county property by using that computer to do his personal resume and photos, using very expensive booking cameras and film to apply for jobs in the big cities here. In Texas.
To take care of his headshots.
Right. But he was completely computer illiterate. And this system that we had ran on MS-DOS. And the software that he was using, he loaded the command com file for the DOS program into the program and then tried to save it back. He didn't know what he was doing. And so he corrupted the command com file, which then crashed the computer the very next time it tried to do something, and locked it up like an anvil on a stump.
Yeah. You got a very expensive
and he asked
paperweight.
me to try to help him to fix it because he didn't know how to, and I had already.
It sounds
been
like
doing
that guy should have been fired.
Well, exactly. But he was a sergeant. They had far more time, money, and training expense invested in him than they did in me. So I became the sacrificial lamb. So
I hate that sacrificial lamb thing.
They tried to blame the wrecking of the booking computer on me simply because I was trying to help the Sergeant Tinker Ham fix it.
And like hell was he going to cover your ass, right?
Exactly. But he sent me home before I could fix it, and then while I was home, told them that it was me that had done it.
Oh.
Now I could absolutely prove that was a lie.
Right.
But the sheriff didn't want to hear it, even though I brought the evidence with me. He didn't want to hear it or see it because he and Tinker were buddies behind the scene, as well as Tinker working for him.
Nothing like the good old boys club.
Yeah.
And the thing is that my mother grew up with the man that was Sheriff Joe Evans at the time, and she never liked him because he was more crooked than anyone we had locked up in the jail by a long shot.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that.
So with that experience,
the fact is, the time I was there, that's how come I quit being a deputy sheriff and just quit law enforcement altogether, because I come to realize that it didn't matter how right you were and how much evidence was in your favor.
Right.
If the politics weren't in your favor, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth, though?
Well, and that's where we start getting into the script that you have created. What was it that was the catalyst that brought you to actually writing that? Because it's a great piece. For those of you that want a copy, feel free to go to dudesandbeer.com/knowledge-vault. There's a government section there, and you can find the Constitution, all kinds of fun stuff, as well as these scripts. You can also go to taooflaw.wordpress.com and find those as well. So what was it that caused you to start creating this script? Was it seeing people that had gone through the system while you were there?
Actually, it was more of
railroaded?
listening to. The more people I listened to explain what they said and did at a traffic stop, the more cringeworthy the next story became.
Yeah.
It seemed to me that nobody, and I mean nobody, understood the common sense practice that I preach in my class when it comes to talking to the cops. And there are 3 rules to talking to the cops, 3 very simple rules. The first rule is shut up. The second rule is when you've done rule 1, shut up some more. And the third rule is don't forget rule 1 and 2 and keep shutting up.
Exactly.
The more you talk, the deeper you make the hole you're going to wind up buried in. It's that simple.
Yeah.
When you have no clue what you're saying and how it impacts the outcome of anything that follows what's happening right now, the less you should be saying ever. And most people absolutely did not understand that. Most people were arguing with the cop. They were admitting to things when the cop asked them questions. A perfect example. A cop walks up to your window in the traffic stop and he goes, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Now, can any of you guys out there tell me why this cop would ask you such a question?
He's looking for a reason to have pulled you over.
Yeah. Why don't you give me a reason that I pulled you over real quick?
Yeah.
What were you possibly doing wrong?
Because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
No, he knows. He knows why he pulled you over. But
Right.
what he's trying to trick you into doing
Yeah, what's he trying
is
to do?
confessing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Most people
yeah.
will say, I suppose it's because I was speeding.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding,
We
ding,
have
ding.
a winner.
Yeah.
We got
Stick
a winner.
fork in his butt. He is done.
Exactly.
Okay? And that's what they're doing. The other thing is that every officer, when they ask these questions, especially when it comes to where you going, where you been, how long you been there, why'd you go there, how much you been drinking, you had anything to drink, you got anything in the car that I should know about it, you want to tell me about, and blah, blah, blah. They're on a fishing expedition.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you talk, the more likely you are to say something that will allow them to continue and extend and escalate that fishing expedition. Because the goal of every traffic stop is to find a way to pander it into and escalate it into a DUI or drug bust. Period.
And
That is what they're
explain
trained
that to
to
the
try to-
audience how that comes to be and how rapidly that comes to be.
Well, it's really very simple. You got something in the car you want to tell me about, and you take too long to answer, or you start talking to somebody else looking for an answer. He's recording all of this,
Right, right.
and they basically can make up any concept, probable cause that they want if they can get you to say just enough to give them an indicator that you're hiding something.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That you're
Totally.
hiding something that give them probable cause.
Yeah. And that's what most people don't understand is before they actively stop their car, the evidentiary chain has already started on behalf of the law. Like cameras have hopefully, God willing, already started rolling.
And their audio is
record.
insane.
Oh, it's
Yeah, it's already
detailed, bro.
Yeah.
Now, if it's not kicked
it's
in,
quality.
then something's wrong. right?
Well, and that's where we start getting into the script, Eddie. And that's where I want you to start explaining to people the moment they pass the police officer on Highway 71, going 76 miles an hour, and they see him pull out. What should their first thing be? Like, where should they start?
The very first thing you should do is have a audio video recording device, preferably more than one, somewhere on or about your person in your car that you can immediately activate if you even sense that you might get pulled over for something. If a cop lines up behind your car and won't change lanes and just follows you, expect to be pulled over. Take out your recording device, start recording the date, the time, the location, the particular agency that's behind you, if they have markings that you can identify them by, and so on and so forth. Don't say anything that would be considered speculation as to I did such and such and now I might be getting pulled over for that.
Yeah.
That would be confessing to something that you think you did, and you may not have done it, but it's going to be treated as a confession nonetheless.
Yeah, because it's actively on your evidence, and if you turn your evidence over to a lawyer, I mean, hey, it's there. That's part of discovery.
Exactly. So, they can't discover things like that to use against you when you're being charged with a crime.
Yes.
That they can't do.
That's true.
You can't be made to provide information against yourself unless it's voluntary. Well, that's what talking is considered as, is voluntary.
Exactly.
Hence the reason you need to shut up.
So in that situation, it would probably be a good time to go comatose, right? You know, like.
Well, yes and no. Once again, if you go comatose, then they can establish an argument of probable cause that you're under the influence. This dude was just dead silent and stone looking. Right. He had to be drunk or on drugs.
That's it.
Exactly. Or possibly like some sort of a medical thing, which is still
which gives them full right.
And believe me, they're never going to go to the medical possibility ahead of the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, the whole purpose of the script is so that you don't have to go completely silent, but at the same time, know what to say and how to say it so that you are not setting yourself up for failure. You're actually setting up the officer for failure. Everything that is in that script is based upon the state and federal constitution's Bill of Rights and the case law on the subject surrounding those Bill of Rights that we have. Now, where most people don't understand rights begins with the concept that they think that the Constitution is what gave those rights to us. Nope. They did not. Those rights that we have existed long before there was a Constitution or a government created by any of them. They're fundamental, they're inherent in every individual. All the Constitution did was supply a list of them to the government that said under no circumstances are you allowed to violate these rights.
Exactly.
But as we all know, that's gone by the wayside in a very rapid manner. It took Rome longer to crumble than it did us.
You ain't even lying.
It took a few little staged events and all.
The people were subverted into knowing what their rights were. Public education was founded not to educate, but to indoctrinate. The moment the government seized control of the schools and began determining what we would be taught as children, sealed the fate of America as to where we would wind up in relation to where we began and why we began in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, I was in high school when they started putting police officers in schools.
I had one.
Like when we started actively
but it was
seeing
at the very beginning,
like constables. Like we had like a district police department. You know, that kind of stuff.
When I started
and all that is straight up normalization.
And he rode around on a golf cart in my school.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just getting
normal today.
Yeah,
but when I started school, you could come up on campus in a pickup truck with a gun rack, fully loaded down with anywhere from 2 to 6 rifles, handguns in the seat, and leave it parked in the parking lot all day with the windows rolled down, and nobody was going to say a word.
That's true.
And nobody was going to mess with the truck or the gun.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, nobody was going to break into your truck for your guns either. I mean, I remember at that point I could also, like, ride my bike to the public library and just leave it outside. And come out and I had my bike.
Was still there.
And I still had my bike. Like, I didn't have to lock it up, you know. And, like, it's kind of freaky.
I would have still locked it up, though, back then.
I do remember that. Yeah, but I mean, hey, you're in, like, 6th grade. You forget to lock your bike sometimes. Hey, I forgot to lock my car in like, one red light town, Louisiana, and it got stolen, Jack.
Oh.
One red light. only a couple
Well,
thousand
they knew it'd
people
be an
living
easy
there.
getaway. 'cause
Unless
there's
you're in
not a lot of
communist
traffic
China, then yeah, your bike ain't getting
Well,
stolen.
the bad thing is, it was unlocked. They didn't break into it, so I couldn't charge them.
Yeah, they still took your property without your permission.
It was really funky, but yeah, that's just it. Setting up evidence from the beginning is the most important thing, because that's what people don't realize. From the moment they turn their lights on, they have started setting a case against you.
Yeah, setting a case. Yeah,
And
people don't realize that.
I was one of those people who, quite honestly, Eddie, on the back of my car, I had live sound. I'm not gonna lie. I have no reason to lie. I've smoked reefer in my life. I was a sound guy for bands and clubs. It happened. It existed. Sometimes I would even have a couple beers at a show. So the last thing I would ever
such
do,
a devil.
well, last thing I would ever do is bring those things to a show with me,
Right.
or drink more than 2 beers throughout the course of 5 hours at a show. Because I had live sound on the back of my car. When I'm driving around at 3 a.m., I'm probably coming home from a bar.
Yeah.
So I was like a moving target when I got pulled over
Right.
and got put onto probation for my situation. And mine was literally one of those good, and the first thing my lawyer asked me, Eddie, was, so how'd that work out for you? Because, hey, well, what happened? Why'd they search your car? Well, I didn't have anything in my car. Hey, I didn't have any. I didn't bring anything with me. The bassist did, and he left his bass in my car.
I don't have anything in my car because it's already in my system.
Yeah, so there I was, being good cooperative citizen. Hey man, I just want to go on my way at 3 a.m. No, next thing I know, I'm caught up in a drug bust in downtown Houston near a school zone with some reefer in somebody's bass case.
Oh,
And,
oh God.
and it's possession's 9/10 of the law. That's yours, and you're in a school zone.
Oh, Jesus.
And yeah, there it
Yeah.
is. Had I not given them permission, active permission, had I done exactly what you said and just shut up and told them, no, you don't have permission to search my vehicle because you have no warrant, you have no cause.
I'm sorry. Permission to search your what?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
He got you.
And we were talking about that before the show, because that was a lot, and I directed you to the conversation on our Facebook page and the video that spawned this episode. Because I do think it's something that people really need to understand, especially with the cases of police shootings now going on. You really do need to know how to talk to the police in a calm, cool, collected manner, and be able to protect your rights and know what the law is. And like your script says, really lay out the fact of, are you trying to violate my rights right now, officer? And it begins with recording.
See, I think, you wouldn't want to say that, right? You wouldn't ask him that, right? Straightforward.
And that's just it. That's what we were getting into before the show. You said, you're what? You shouldn't call it your vehicle. And let's get, because that's a big part of why most people shouldn't be pulled over to begin with. Am I correct?
That's true.
So,
especially if it's anything relating to a transportation alleged offense.
And let's get into that.
99.9% of the people on the roads are not engaging in transportation when they get pulled over. They're completely private. They're not doing anything commercial, which is the only thing that the Transportation Code in the state of Texas applies to. If you do the research and you read and study the actual law, that picture becomes very, very clear. You can't trust the court opinions in Texas because the court opinions are written to intentionally obfuscate the concept of what the law actually says. They keep reverting back to the statutory terminology while ignoring the fact that they do not have any substantive evidence supporting the statutory terminology or the subject matter to which the statute specifically applies. And the courts here intentionally ignore that for the sake of keeping the status quo and the money flowing.
Yeah, and that's just it. to actively be using that and to know the fact that, and that was a lot of the big question that was going on. And one of our big commenters, who's also a guest on the show, Stone Winchester, posted another video on his timeline. And I was like, if you want to know what happened right here, like, you need to tune in tonight and check it out, because people don't realize the fact that in their private conveyance, in their private use of a vehicle, that traffic
There's
laws.
no such thing as private use of a vehicle.
Yes,
private
use of a car. You're correct. I'm sorry. And that's just it. It's very specific, the terminology that you have to use.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused myself. So say if I get pulled over, for speeding or something, where the cop's walking up behind me, comes up. How do I refer to my vehicle again?
As a car.
As a car. Okay.
A car or conveyance.
Okay.
Yes.
My
It's
car.
not a road machine like some of the Patronut theories say it is.
Yeah.
It's not my time capsule. It's nothing like that.
Maybe if it's a DeLorean.
You say things like
Now
that,
he's gonna think you're on
immediately
drugs.
You're labeled as someone that doesn't understand reality.
Yes.
And that works against you later.
Exactly.
So understanding what you're saying and why you're saying it is essential to the success of doing so, period. It's like speaking gibberish while pretending to speak a foreign language. You may convince a person who doesn't speak the language you're pretending to speak in some form, but a person who does speak it is going to look at you like you've lost your ever-loving mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So...
And legalese works exactly that way, because legalese is its own language. Now, the difference is legalese looks and sounds exactly like the language you normally speak. But the terminology it uses means something completely different than how you mean it when you use it in the common way. If you use it in their way, it has their meaning. If you use it in the common way, it has a different meaning. But the problem is when you just speak it without a context, they're free to assume which one it applies to.
Yes.
I feel like you could be patently contextual and they're still going to be free to assume whatever they want most of the time anyway, though. Like, you can say all the right things. They're still going to do what they want at the end of the day.
Free to assume, and having an admission from you in agreement with their assumption. That's where they get you. When nothing that you say or do gives credence and substance to their presumption, then the burden of proof remains on them to make it work. But the more you talk and the more you say things that go with the flow, so to speak, as to where they're trying to lead you, the less work they have in proving that you're guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what Julie was getting at maybe was like, I think I was feeling that was like, yeah, exactly. These things are what you're saying will help you in the long run. But for the time being, that cop is actually, I think what Julie's saying is he's going to do whatever, kind of like if he's not going to go by the law, if
like
he's
if
just
he's
going to...
that sheriff that knew that you didn't break the computer, but he didn't give a fuck, he's not going to give a fuck to the Joe Bob on the street who's patently saying the right things.
Like this isn't going to save you at that moment, but it's going to maybe hopefully save you in the long run kind of deal.
Well, and I think the idea, because don't forget, at the beginning of that script is a whole bunch of stuff in italics that are instructions that you're supposed to do before you enact the script. One of those things is start recording in audio and video.
Right.
The other thing is make sure to call somebody.
Right.
Get a third person on the phone, and if you have to, lie to the police, tell them it's your legal counsel.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. They cannot stop you from making a phone call.
So you're saying that a police can't stop a phone call during the middle of all this?
Mm-mm.
There's 2 phone calls an officer cannot interfere with: your attempt to contact legal counsel and a call to 911. If that officer interrupts either of those calls, it's a violation of your rights or the law itself in relation to the 911 call. It's a felony.
It's a felony on behalf of the officer.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is cool information.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to contact legal counsel to
Right.
protect your rights in an encounter with an officer, and the officer prevents you from seeking that assistance, that too is a fundamental violation of rights.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is why
Because-
you start the recording and
Yeah.
then make the phone call. Because
Yeah,
at that point, you've got the officer telling you, you need to hang up that phone. That's my legal counsel. I'm not going to hang up. You need to hang that up right now. Like,
Yep.
he's violated it. You have proof.
So in other words, the
So
first time
he
you
could-
say it,
He could take you to jail. That's fine.
right.
You've got a recording of
Right.
that.
The more he persists at that point that you've already told him, then he's out of
So
line.
then
The
his
deeper
best bet
his
is just
hole
to
gets
kill
dug.
you and then delete the recording.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know this.
Well,
Okay.
and you can even do stuff like right now. Like, I could literally record this Skype phone
Yeah, just
call with
straight on.
Skype.
Yep.
Like, you
Okay.
Can back it all
So-
up.
Think of an encounter with in a traffic stop with a cop, like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon.
can. Yes.
Totally.
Good choice.
You're just the innocent Roadrunner
Yep.
who, no matter what Wile E. does, no matter how deep a hole he digs or how he rigs it to explode or whatever, you're
That
always
anvil.
going to trick him into falling into and triggering his own trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
a good
the
analogy.
best way to do that, the best way to do that is to know your rights, invoke those rights, demand those rights, and protect those rights. That is the other 3 rules of dealing with an officer: invoking your rights and doing it the right way, demanding those rights. In other words, you ain't making me hang up this phone. This is my legal counsel. I have a right to legal counsel in any encounter with law enforcement. Okay?
Yep.
And protect those rights. I'm not answering your questions. I'm not waiving my right to remain silent. I'm not giving you any documentation unless my legal counsel says it's okay to do so. And they haven't done that because you maybe hang up on them, Dippy.
Right? Right?
All right, here's a question. What if you tell him it's your legal counsel, but it was that other person that you just wanted to listen in on? You know what I
Technically,
mean?
your legal counsel is anybody giving you legal advice, my friend.
Oh,
Right, they don't
anybody.
have to
Oh,
be
okay.
a-
Doesn't
So-
have to.
Certified
Doesn't have
Oh,
to.
the other-
Doesn't have to be a barred lawyer.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking.
You can
Okay.
call me
Yeah.
at 3 a.m.
That's what I'm
as long as
saying.
I
Like,
pick
so
up.
it could be
It
anybody.
wouldn't matter if you called your favorite bartender.
Or
Yeah.
answering machine. I mean, just so
Yeah.
that you've got something on
See,
the other line.
okay. I was thinking it had to be a
No.
bar attorney.
Not
or
at all.
whatever, you know?
No.
Whoa.
No.
That
And-
changes
and
a lot of
that's
things.
just it. It's
Yeah.
whoever you're
That makes it
trusting with
really
your-
easy.
Ego don't call
Yeah.
me at
I
3 in the
mean,
morning.
think about it. Think about it. The Roadrunner doesn't care how Wile E sets off his trap. Roadrunner doesn't care less. He knows it's going to backfire.
Yeah.
All you have to do is set the situation up to make that happen. You call somebody, anybody. You tell the officer it's legal counsel. Whether it is or not is absolutely irrelevant to the violation of rights that occurs when the officer tries to prevent you from talking to someone that you have identified as your legal counsel.
And these rights that you're speaking of, because and that's one reason specifically why I attached Constitution and things like that onto the same page as this, because I want people to be able to go and read this stuff. There are a couple rights specifically that you are looking to defend amongst that when dealing with an officer, and let's get into that, Eddie.
Fourth and Fifth Amendment, always.
Okay,
Always.
and explain those to the layman out there who's not fully aware of their constitutional rights, what the Fourth and Fifth Amendment state.
You have the right to be free from any unreasonable searches and seizures, and you have the right to remain silent and against self-incrimination. This is exactly why you are not required to answer or say anything to an officer. Period. Doesn't matter how many questions they ask. Doesn't matter how hot-tempered they get. You're not required to utter a single word.
Yeah.
In relation to self-incrimination, you cannot be compelled to produce any information that could potentially be used against you or that could incriminate you in some other alleged criminal act. You are not an attorney. Therefore, it is not up to you to determine whether or not providing a license or insurance paperwork or anything at all to this cop could potentially incriminate you. You must assume that it will.
That's right.
You must absolutely assume that anything you say or do will be used against you in a court of law, just like this cop was required to inform you when he pulled you over under 38.22 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure.
Yeah.
And an act he failed to fulfill.
Yep.
Now, according to 38.22, if the officer fails in reading you your rights before he starts questioning or demanding information from you, then nothing he gets in any statement or otherwise can be used against you in a court of law. It's written right into the statute that way. Yet they do it every
And that's what I'm saying. Even
hundreds of times.
even in my case, like I fully incriminated myself there, and they allowed that to happen. Like
Of course.
every
they're
step
going
of the
to. You
way.
think their life
And like I
easier.
said, my lawyer was like, "So how'd that work out for you?" Like the first words out of his mouth,
great.
you know. But at the same time, it's like even then, you know, there should have technically been no case against me because they fully had
Did
me
every 2 years.
answer questions without reading me my rights.
Yeah, but then you have another line that has to be blurred.
Yes,
At least the way they do it, it's blurred.
it is
And that comes to voluntary confession.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now-
if you basically showed them where the drugs are, then that's
Well, and that's just it. My allowance for search
You
was
might wanna
voluntary confession.
Inspect this lovely base case I had right over
Yeah.
here.
never seen
That I
this
don't
before.
that I don't
Smells
have the
like
key
reefer.
for, but is locked.
Well, let's look at it from a realistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
If the officer says, "Do you have drugs?" and you go, "Uh-huh."
Yeah.
Well, where are they? Under my seat.
Yeah.
What kind? Really bad or not so bad? Okay, that's a voluntary state.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to get suppressed. That's
No.
not going to get thrown out.
No.
However, same set of circumstances. You got any drugs in the car? Officer, I invoke my right to remain silent. I invoke my right to assistance of counsel. Get out of the car. No, sir. I am in fear for my safety if I get out of the car because now you're acting like you have an attitude problem.
Yep.
Get out of the car. And even if they break your window and haul you out, now if they go through the car and find the drugs, now it can be suppressed for an illegal search. Why? No voluntary statement,
Right.
no probable suspect drugs. He just did it
Yeah.
because he had a gun and help.
Yeah.
Damn.
He,
And,
Okay.
he had a gun and no warrant, and you on the side of the road
I have a feeling that shit goes on a lot.
Oh yeah.
on the regs.
Yeah, on the regs.
On
yeah.
the regs.
Yeah.
It's
Well-
yeah.
Both of them go on a lot.
Yeah, true.
For
true, very
every
true.
1,000 illegal arrests, there's probably 2,000 legal arrests because somebody didn't know how to shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
I spent 2 years of life on paper because
They like
of
a
my
talker.
inability to shut up.
Basically, if they love the talkers, I
They
bet.
do. They do. And it wasn't until that, because, I mean, believe me, I'd been a law-abiding
Because you think you're
citizen
doing a
my
good
whole
deed,
life.
right? You're like,
I'd had
I'm doing
like
good.
a traffic ticket in my life up to that point.
Right.
And I was 35 when that happened.
Yep.
So, you know, it was one of those, like, I
Like,
led the
I'm
good
fine.
life. I
got
did.
nothing to worry
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bam.
Trying to be the good
it
guy, you
happens.
know?
And like I said in that conversation on Facebook, more than once in my life have I been in the situation where a group of people I'm with gets drawn down on by police officers.
Yeah.
Where suddenly guns come out because some dude stands up off the edge of a pickup truck. You know, or something like that. I
Right.
mean, and it literally takes something
Right.
just that simple to put them in the right
Right.
and to give them just cause.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like that South Park episode
But are there
where,
some
where all you have to do is say that bear was coming right at you.
Right.
You know?
But how many of them are coming into it looking for that just cause
Well,
rather than just like
the real
hey,
question is,
I am doing the right thing.
the real question, like Eddie was saying, is setting it up to where you are the one, instead of the officer saying, I feel threatened, and then he pulls his weapon.
Right.
You say, "I
You're
feel
the
threatened."
one on tape saying, I feel threatened. Please bring
Well-
your superior here right now.
don't make the mistake of assuming that the aggressive cops are the only ones you have to worry about.
Exactly.
Ooh.
No, my
that's
guys
a-
were nowhere near
You
aggressive.
said yours was nice.
Yeah,
Some of
mine
the biggest
was
mistakes people
overly
make
nice. Well, not
are
overly, but
officers.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Some of
Eddie.
the
I'm
biggest-
sorry.
No, it's okay. Some of the biggest mistakes that people make in relation to dealing with a cop is when they encounter a nice cop.
Mm.
The nice cop makes you want to be friendly. The nice cop wants to make you engage in conversation, to talk about your day, to talk about how bad it was because your girlfriend broke up with you, so you went to the bar and had a couple of drinks because you were just feeling so low, and now you're on your way home and step out of the car.
Yeah.
Time for your breathalyzer.
Yeah.
It's time for you to walk the line. It's time for your stigmas test. All of which, by the way, are completely susceptible to my personal interpretation to haul your butt to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So, the rule applies no matter what the cop's attitude or disposition. Shut up, keep shutting up, and shut up some more. Follow the script. Protect your rights by demanding your rights and invoking your rights. Okay? That's simple. If you deviate from that, anything you say or do that is not invoking a right, demanding a right, or protecting a right is the wrong thing to have coming out of your mouth. Period.
Yeah, and I mean, I read easily. I hadn't read the script in quite a while, woefully, but I now have a copy with me, and I mean, just to go through
That's my copy.
the do's and don'ts, everything else. Yeah, I do. I've got a few here, but like don't ever roll down your window more than one at a time. If you remain in your car during the stop, no matter what the officer tells you to do.
Exactly.
And, it eliminates the possibility of an officer fabricating an opportunity to escalate the stop by saying that the resulting cross breeze allowed him or her to smell something. And that kind of stuff is so entirely important, especially whenever you're heading home, like I said, from work at 2 a.m. Stuff like that.
It's things people never think about unless they actually sit down and concentrate on their own personal life experience. How many times have you walked up to a friend on a summer day in Texas that's riding around in their tinted window car with the windows up so you know they're running the AC? But you walk up to the window, they crack their window, and immediately a gust of cold air hits you right in the face,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
along with every smell that's in that car.
Yeah, dog, whatever.
Exactly. So when you do stuff like that, that temperature difference creates a pressure difference
right.
at the same time. So that's why I say once you're coming to a stop, roll all the windows down to depressurize the car and roll them all the way back up except for the one next to you, and keep it up to no more than 2 to 2.5 inches open. Now, here's the other thing. A cop may tell you, roll your window all the way down. That's not a lawful order.
Yes.
He has no need for you to have that window all the way down. Why? Because you are not even required to speak to him. Doesn't matter if you're miming through the window. Okay?
Well, and explain that to people. Explain why they are not obliged to speak to an officer of the law that pulls them over. Because that's
Fourth
the
and
terminology.
Fifth Amendment.
Exactly. And that's what people don't get. Is like, well, wait a minute, he pulled me over. He must obviously have a reason.
Well, what he thinks his reason is, and how that reason conflicts with your rights, is only something that you can determine and protect. He's not there to protect it for you, despite that's the whole reason we created government.
And despite the oath that he took to defend your constitutional rights.
Well, you have to understand, they're no longer taking oaths as peace officers. They are taking oaths as law enforcement officers.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
And quite literally, the only people you're talking about taking the oath that I'm talking about are constitutional sheriffs, folks. And that's pretty much it. Regular law enforcement, like he said, doesn't go through all
APD don't,
all
right?
the criminal law
they're
courses and things like
their
that.
laws,
They are
right?
law enforcement
APD,
law enforcement officers.
APD is an animal unto itself, and let me explain why. In Texas, the rule of cities, municipalities, home rule cities, is very, very simple, according to the Texas courts. No home rule municipality may exercise any power and authority that is not specifically stated in its city charter. Now, what I would like for you guys to do when in your leisure time after the show is go online and find the Austin City Charter.
Oh, I will, believe me, and I will post it in our knowledge base.
And Leslie will read it.
It'll be right there in the
Austin
knowledge
City
vault.
Charter.
You do, this is what you need to look for. Look for any provision that authorizes the city of Austin to have a police department. They don't have any provision for a police department.
Wow.
Okay? In other words, the Austin Municipal Police Department is not the municipal police department.
Yeah.
They are one of two things. They are either a private contractor or they're a bunch of private mercenaries hired as security guards for the city.
Well,
But they are not city employees, and they are not an authorized part of the city according to the city charter and the case law on that subject here in Texas.
You know what's interesting too with that, like I was saying before the show, I work in insurance, and Austin is the only city that we can't get the police reports through the normal channels. We actually have to get them through their own particular channel.
Wow.
And it takes much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly why you can't petition police records from the city.
Yeah.
You have to petition them directly from the Austin Police Department.
Yeah.
They're a private company.
And you know what's interesting? I remember before I even moved here. You remember I came, Julie, for a Christmas party with Amy, and we literally got into an accident on the way to the Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, stop. And I called the police, and they were like, we are not the ones that you need to call. I was like, who the hell do I call?
They say to call.
Who the hell? Yes,
yeah, the
that's exactly what they
sheriff's
said.
department,
Yeah.
I think,
Band of
and your
mercenaries.
insurance.
So they were like exchange information and deal with your insurance and move on.
Yeah, their policy is not to come out
Straight
unless
up.
there's
an injury, bodily injury or something, and that had never even crossed my mind until you just talked about this Austin City ruling.
Yep. it's
Yeah, all this is
damn near
connecting now.
impossible to
It makes
get
sense.
Police
Man.
reports from them.
That is, and you know, it's funny because
Holy shit.
there's reports about that all over the country. I know that there was a city in Pennsylvania where that happened, where they had literally privatized the police force, and it was like basically, like you said, like a Blackwater type situation where it was like, hey, we'll bring in these independent contractors to be our police force.
That's what
and
that
stuff
is.
like that. And you see it all the time, especially in the prison system in America.
Why would you want to do
Yeah.
that, though?
Three
I mean, I'm sure they got
quarters of the prisons that we have are all
right.
privatized, and like my
Always.
buddy who was my sponsor for AA and stuff while I was on paper for my probation, like he said, it's called a system for a reason, because much like a gambler, they will do nothing but break even. They aren't going to lose money at it. It's the system because they're going to make money or at least break even.
Well, they're like a volume retailer. They make their money on volume.
yeah.
Okay. So
Volume
for
retailer.
every 5 guys that fight and win, even if they spend $80,000 trying to take $200. Yeah. Okay. Let me give you another perfect example. I have a report from the City of Austin comptroller, which is their chief accountant.
Yeah.
Right.
Austin collected money from traffic citations in the year of 2010. In the year of 2010, Austin issued more than 364,000 traffic citations.
Wow.
They collected more than $64 million. Half of that, as far as half of whatever the actual traffic fines are, which is usually $200 maximum. So for every $200 generated by the city of Austin in traffic fines, $100 of that goes to the state, and the city of Austin is to put the rest of it in a road and bridge fund. Okay? But
All right.
they get to keep 100% of their court costs and fees. The court costs and fees actually exceed the amount of the fine if they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Now, this too is in violation of Texas law. The Code of Criminal Procedure is divided into two titles, Title I and Title II. Under Title II, the chapter there tells you very clearly that in order for any municipality or justice court to collect its costs or the fines, once a conviction has been had, they are required to send a signed, itemized bill to the individual before they can collect a penny. It has to be signed by the officer that is either authorizing the charges on the bill or is responsible for the charges on the bill. They have to sign it. The other thing is that the maximum amount they can charge is written right into Title II. I went through every single provision in Title II. The maximum amount that I can find that any JP or municipality can charge an individual for costs and fees is $21.
What?
It's not $140. It's not $190. It's not $300. It is $21. They cannot charge you more than $4 for a jury trial. That's written right into the statute.
Wow.
They cannot charge
That's
you
a
more
deal.
than $1 for this type of for the issuance of a warrant, and so on and so forth. All these things that they're running up these excessive costs to generate revenue for themselves are illegal.
Yeah, it's
Texas
straight
law.
It's straight usury. Quite honestly, I mean by law, it is usury. Like
Well, no, usury would involve interest. What
I
this
guess
is
that's true,
flat out fraud.
Yeah,
That's what this is.
yeah,
Flat out fraud.
yeah.
Not only are they fraudulent charges that if they ever gave you the itemized bill, and I have yet to ever see one in all my years of doing this, not once have I ever seen them provide the itemized bill the law requires them to provide. Not once.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. Of why your court cost was $192 all of a sudden.
Exactly. If they itemized what they're supposed to on that bill, they couldn't collect what they do. So they lie. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they defraud. And that's very easy to prove because you have what they collect from you versus what the statute says they can legally collect from you. And they don't match. They're not even close.
Yeah. Well, and how I guess one of the other issues that we deal with all the time. I know you have a red light letter that exists where it's because and I know Houston actually shut down its red light cameras shortly after they went into effect. I want to say it was within a year because they started showing the fact that people were pushing more yellow lights, stuff like that. But it was also the fact of people were fighting the cases and winning them.
Yeah.
Like it was quite literally the fact of you can't prove half of it.
But see, there was a problem with the way they were doing it in Texas. Your first recourse was to go talk to a cop who worked for the department that was going to testify against you in court that you were liable for the ticket. That's problem number one.
Yeah.
Okay. Problem number two is the only appeal that you had was to the municipal court, but only in an administrative capacity, never a judicial capacity. Now that, under any definition, in any constitution, in any state, is an unconstitutional bill of pains and penalties. Now, what is the legal definition of a bill of pains and penalties? It is a legislative or administrative, which is exactly what the red light camera situation is, administrative.
Yeah.
Punishment without judicial review. In other words, you have no opportunity to appeal to an actual judicial court for a determination as to whether or not you were truly liable for the money. That process does not exist in Texas in
That's
relation
crazy.
to red light cameras. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Whoa.
unconstitutional.
Well, and it's the same exact thing. I'm trying to get. There's a guy here in Texas who is actively trying to put together a class action lawsuit against
I know.
TxDOT.
And
And
there's an Dallas that's doing that too.
Yeah.
And he actually won his preliminary.
Yep.
And I'm the one that made him use that argument.
love it, because absolutely. And I have literally worked like the corporate event for the company, for like the law firm that represents TxDOT. And I told the lady straight up in the control booth, like, I'm not paying my fines. Like, you can't. You just gave it, like, I don't know. I'm from Katy. Highway 99 was always free. Then suddenly one day I go on it and it's a toll road. And then
Whoa.
suddenly it's
Tolls
not
are
even a
crazy.
toll road that is like the one here where it's like, hey, we'll take your picture and send you a $1.50 bill. No, it's just we're going to send you a $150 fine.
Yeah, $150.
And not just that. Not just that. But a $150 fine from an office in Trenton, New Jersey, son.
Trent, New Jersey.
Trenton, New Jersey. Like, why are my tax dollars even going to an office in Trenton, New Jersey?
That
What's
what
Because they're
the red
privately,
flag to me.
What's that
Now, your
about?
privately
tax
managed
dollars-
roads.
Your tax dollars are going to New Jersey because your fines and fees are going to the location and to Texas. That's why.
Yeah.
And they exceed the taxes.
Yeah. And
If they can hit you with 2 or 3 tickets a year, that's going to be way more than you paid them in the tax base.
exactly. And my argument all the time is, you have a camera there, show me that it was me behind the wheel. I am not my inanimate object is not responsible for the actions of other drivers.
Well, and that's valid, though, because they told me once that I ran a toll on 4th of July, and I was at my house, and I was like, that wasn't me, that wasn't my car.
Yeah.
And they threw it out. That was fine. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay
But,
it.
but no, I've been like, you can show me a picture of my license plate, but you don't show me a picture of like me
you, that's
or my wife, like the two people
recognizable.
registered to
Right,
drive the
right.
vehicle. If you want to show me a picture of me
Car.
behind
Sorry,
the
here we go
wheel,
again. Drive the vehicle.
sorry,
Here we go
if you
again.
want to show me behind the wheel of my car,
Well,
then-
see, here in Texas, the red light camera statutes, the way they're written is very, very straightforward. They are not authorized to issue citations on those cameras. None. The only thing they're authorized to do to collect that $75 is to pay $375 to file a lawsuit to collect the $75.
and
They have to file an actual civil lawsuit and collect the $75 as a judgment. That's not happening. They are actually defrauding. They're committing mail fraud,
yeah,
federal mail fraud. Both the company and the individual agencies in Texas, the police department, the municipality, whatever, are committing federal mail fraud by sending you a document that threatens you into paying or suffering consequences. That is fraud. In Texas, that's a felony that is called simulation of legal process. It's an actual crime. Yet
Whoa.
how many of these individuals have ever been charged with this?
yeah.
None.
Well, it's and it's the same thing with the toll road court. If you go to toll road court, you're there before a magistrate. There's no jury. It's a magistrate court, and the magistrate is paid by the toll road authority.
Of course, yeah.
They're paid by the people whose active interest it is to give you the fine.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not like you're going to a JP that's paid out of like a public fund
once
or something
again-
like that.
Yeah. Bill of Pains and Penalties. Absolutely unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm actually helping a friend of mine who has his own irrigation business against the State Office of Administrative Hearings, which is the administrative court. And in Texas, there's only one of those, and it's here in Austin.
Yep.
They don't exist anywhere else in Texas. And the let's see,
They make
the
it real easy for you.
TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They're trying to assess a $7,000 a day fine against my friend's business
Cool.
because he doesn't have an irrigator's license. But when you go read the actual statutes they're trying to say that he violated, the statutes very clearly say that the individual is not required to personally hold a license. They simply have to employ someone who does have a license.
Yep.
That's it.
Huh.
And that person has to be there working. That's all.
Right. And that he does, right?
Well, yeah,
That he
I mean,
does.
it's the same thing as whenever I go
then
out
he's
and
legal.
install something. As long as my contractor has insurance, I don't have to have it.
Common sense tells me this guy's legal.
Like,
Well, there's the caveat, common sense.
yeah, exactly. That's the rub right there. And like you said, shut up, and keep shutting up. When you're talking with police, it does have to go a little bit beyond common sense. It does have to get into legalese. It does have, because even the script that you have is a little thick in some of the language, but it's literally talking to them in the language in which the law is written. And without that language being on tape, without you stating these things, like you said, you can't say vehicle. You have to use very explicit terms. You have to use very specific terms when you're talking in legalese.
Or avoid them.
Or
Right.
avoid it
Right.
entirely and just say, I ain't talking, I ain't giving you nothing.
Right.
One of the two.
I'm gonna go comatose, but I'm not under drugs. But I'm not under drugs.
Stephen likes being comatose.
From this point on, from
I'm
this
gonna invoke my
from this
natural
point
right.
on, I'm telling you, I'm a limp noodle.
Yeah. So,
Well, if you'll notice the way the script is written, the script specifically instructs you to answer every question with a question of your own. Everything the officer asked you, if it has anything to do with about provide me with an answer to this question that will give me information, what should be the first right that pops into your mind that needs to be protected if you're going to say anything in relation to that question?
Number five. All day
Okay.
long, and it's the fact of I don't have to answer your question. For as far as I know, I am not guilty of any crime. I have not been presented with any crime before me.
Well, let's simplify it a little more than
Yes.
that. Officer, can any of the information that you are demanding from me be used against me in a court of law to potentially incriminate me in any way? I must presume that it can and that it will. Okay? And as such,
he
I
should be
cannot give it to you without advice of legal counsel.
Yes.
So he should be reading your Mirandas at that point, right?
Well, the thing about it is, here's the other problem for these guys. Texas actually only authorizes and requires the officer to perform a specific act under the transportation code during a traffic stop for two specific charges. Only two: open container and speeding. There is absolutely no criteria in the entire code that requires the officer to do anything in relation to any other allegation.
And is this
That-
just Texas?
This is specific to Texas. I
Okay.
can't say this is true everywhere, but
Right.
here it's absolutely true.
Please check your local
Let-
laws and regulations,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
Yes. Now, let me give you an example. I've actually got an article about this up on my legal blog, and it's one of the last couple that I wrote. But the fact of the matter is that when an officer pulls you over for, let's say, a broken taillight, okay, under the statute, the only command to issue a citation is for open container or speeding. He is not required to issue a citation for any other offense, period.
Yeah.
If he is not required to issue a citation, he is not required to obtain a signature either. Even if he does issue the citation, it does not have to be signed unless it's for speeding or open container, period. So part of the process of this recording is when the cop says sign the ticket or go to jail, and he's charging you with something other than speeding or open container.
Right.
But here's the other problem. He's not authorized to take you directly to jail. If you won't sign the citation, or that you refuse to sign because the citation is not for speeding or open container, he has no choice but to let you go or take you to the nearest available magistrate, who is then required to do a probable cause hearing, which is under Chapter 16 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, and in Texas it's called an examining trial. And there they're supposed to come to a probable cause determination to see whether or not the officer was in the right for stopping you in the first place without a warrant, and then whether or not you are potentially guilty of the alleged offense. If that's true, then the magistrate can issue what's called a finding of probable cause, which they're required to do within 48 hours of an allegation being made, or the person has to be released. Guess what never appears in a transportation-related case? There is no probable cause ever found and no order ever signed. In other words, the citation is dead in the water 48 hours after it's issued. Completely dead. But they don't treat it that way. They act as if they have the authority to go on. That's why the court tries to send you an arrest warrant notice and issue an arrest warrant for you. But here's another problem. The Code of Criminal Procedure does not authorize the issuance of an arrest warrant for a Class C fine-only offense of any kind, including speeding or open container. The statute is very clear that if the person fails to appear in relation to the citation, the only thing the court can do is seek a signed complaint, and then and only then can they issue a summons or subpoena for the individual to appear in court. Then, if they ignore that, then they can get a warrant for contempt of court.
Yeah.
But not for the Class C fine only. There are so many things written into the law that our courts ignore or do wrong or do in violation of the law to such a degree that they fundamentally impair individual rights.
Yeah.
The more ignorant you remain about what those things are and how that happens, the easier a target you become.
Absolutely. I mean, I use the example all the time of when I went on paper. I mean, my job was running sound at bars with bands and at weddings and events, stuff like that. And they literally made it a part of my probation that I could not be anywhere that alcohol was served. And I was like,
so you just couldn't do your job.
Wait a minute.
Your job was already prior to that.
You saw my business card, right? Like, you saw how I make my money. So you're telling me that you're going to impede my trade so that I can't pay my fines?
Right.
Like, this is how I make my money. That's how I would pay my fines. You're impeding my trade. Like, you can't keep me from doing what I do for a living just because it happens to be around where alcohol is.
And mind that I just
That's assuming guilt.
When I got recently, they were like, "Oh no, you go to work. No, go to work." You know, because they want to be paid. I figured that. You know what I mean? Money.
And you know, it is the fact of you have to be so careful, especially nowadays. You know, like Julie was saying beforehand, with the shootings and things like that going on, and some of it is people that don't know how to talk with police, and a lot of it is horrifying police training at the get-go. And people that they have not properly trained.
It's horrifying people everywhere seeing these videos that are coming out on social media.
But how many of these cities that this happens in are in the same situation as Austin, where they aren't actual constitutional officers of the law?
Right. They're mercenaries.
You know, they're basically hired contractors according to all city law. And
there's a video you can find on YouTube where DHS is training certain members of local police departments, especially SWAT teams, that the founding fathers were actually domestic terrorists.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually something he tells them in their training.
Yeah.
That when someone is talking about the Constitution or demanding rights under the Constitution, you must consider them a domestic terrorist.
Yeah. And that came out.
I know.
That came out
insane, dude.
Dude, it came out
It's so insane.
It came out in 2013 that they were labeling
I've
our
heard this stuff,
that they
yeah.
were labeling our vets as they came back.
Oh, yeah.
more prone to be turned as lone wolves.
Oh, yeah.
As domestic terrorists, and thereby because they had PTSD could not these are people that we trained.
They're like public
to
enemy.
use rifles.
Public enemy
Like,
number one.
They were
Facts,
put
you
in
know,
the
or
position.
whatever.
Anybody that you would want to own a handgun, like somebody who's been that we spent tens of thousands of dollars to properly use one,
Right.
might be the dude that you want to own a handgun.
I mean, maybe like think about the fact that if those are not the people that you want to own a handgun, like what did you do to them?
Yeah, exactly. But quite literally to come to the fact of if you have these things, you are labeled this way. Like
Exactly.
there are literally people coming back from war that are labeled as domestic terrorists and stuff like
Or
that.
being deported.
Or being deported and stuff like that.
No, I've
And,
heard this.
Like,
I have.
and it is the fact of, like you said, and it's become part of some school teachings and stuff where, it's the fact of if the founding fathers existed today, if they were putting forth that movement today, and it's something that this show was founded on, actually,
It
was the
becomes-
fact that less than 20% of the American public took place in the American Revolution, yet still we beat the biggest army that up until that point the world had seen.
And then guess what?
America.
Guess what? Now they look at that as we were bad people
Well,
for doing
no.
that.
Now-
we should have been,
Now,
whatever to the big guy.
Like he said, nowadays you look at it and it's like if the tables were turned and those founding fathers were here today, by all government definition, they would be considered quote unquote
Yeah.
lone wolf terrorists.
Well, sure, but that doesn't.
we should have been submissive.
I mean, at the time, their government, which was England, saw them that way. So,
Oh no,
I mean,
absolutely, yeah,
it's
it was a
not really
hangable offense.
That different.
We hang together or we hang separately. That's what they said. Like one of the two.
No, we all
and-
stand together,
or
or
we
we will
hang-
surely hang
Yeah,
separately.
Yes,
There
exactly.
you go.
That's it.
Yeah, Eddie's got
That's
it.
the one. And-
Eddie's
Hey,
got it.
you know,
Well, let me correct one of your statistics here. It
Sure.
was actually 2 to 5% of the original population of the colonies that fought England, not 20.
Oh, no.
like I said,
Nice.
less than 20.
Very nice.
Less than 20.
Yeah.
But-
Hey, there's our
Hey,
good buddy.
Dean has,
Good buddy.
our friend Dean Larinaga has joined in, and I can't even finish my beer. I feel like I have listened. I feel like
Well,
I
I
have
know
to
you're having a
listen
great show, and the
super
conversation's
intent.
better than the drinking.
and that's just it, because like these things, like I said, are so important, and people don't realize that not necessarily the fine print in which they live their daily life. Like quite literally the fine line on which they walk every day when they pass an officer on the side of the road, every day when they pass that officer in the
Right.
school zone, you know?
Well, I know there's an issue in the world when a person passes an officer and would rather not be next to him or feel threatened by him,
Yeah.
or doesn't want to, and when I remembered, kind of an officer is someone you should be able to go to. you
Yeah,
know?
like if you need help,
Yeah.
go find Officer Friendly or whatever.
You think
I was
that.
not raised like that, but I hear
But
tell
today,
stories.
today in this
I was
age,
told
it's not. Everybody is. It's more of a negative.
Yeah.
than a positive.
I was told that.
Well, yeah, he's been renamed to Officer Less Than Friendly.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Yeah. Officer HR, I believe his name is.
You come to him with the problem, and he's like, "What
He's
you got in your
probably
pocket?"
just gonna shoot you.
Yeah.
And, I remember even back in the day, in the early 90s, Eddie, when the Houston Beltway first started, and there was a huge conflagration between HPD, who patrolled the highways in Houston. It was basically
What
HPD
is that,
and DPS.
Oh, okay.
Houston
One of those.
Police Department.
Oh, I feel you.
But the constables.
Sorry, I didn't live in Houston, so I had to
The
figure that.
constables is who was providing
Getting laughed at over
who
here.
was providing the policing for the Beltway, and it was one of those like, why? Well, it's a roadway in Houston. Why would HPD not have purview? And even at that point, I had a constable tell me, listen, no matter what happens, if they want to search your car, you tell them, fine, you bring a dog out here to search my car because I don't want your human hands going through it. Like, and that was like in '92. I was like a junior in high school.
Are
when
they
that
written in the
conversation
Houston
happened.
City Charter?
But I don't know. I would have to check that out because we do have Art Acevedo out there now,
Yeah, now we do.
who granted was a decent guy and tried to put forth some good stuff, but had hands tied in a lot of ways. And you know, when you're looking at local policing, stuff like that, what are some of the things that people need to look out for with their local police when they are just out and about, Eddie? I mean, what's some of the behaviors that they should be looking for to kind of keep their eyes out?
I want to back up for 1 second before I answer
Sure.
that question. Being in Austin and having a lot of direct personal contact with Art Acevedo through either InfoWars or other means, I'm not going to go with the technically a good guy thing. He did whatever served him best.
Right.
Not
I
the
agree.
public.
I agree.
That's it. It had nothing to do with public interest. What served him the best.
Oh yeah, like I said, he's a great guy. He was a really nice dude to like hang out with. That's about
I
it.
saw
I
that
wouldn't want to
episode.
hang out with Art
But
Acevedo.
I saw
Yeah.
that one episode with you guys
So,
on there.
but
Alex
it's always
talking about
very
his 50
cordial.
cal.
No one else knows this except for the folks that were down at InfoWars when it happened. But that 2.5 hour presentation I did the day that was done, Art was actually in studio.
yes,
with
he
Alex.
was.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, he was.
Yes, and after that was done, both of us, Alex tried to get us both in the same room
I
to have
remember.
a live debate
I remember.
about the failure to ID statute here in Texas.
It was like
Oh, he
cats
didn't
in a
want to
sack.
touch that, I'm sure.
Now, the decision was made by Acevedo that after 30 years as a police officer, he was not prepared to argue the statute with me on Alex's show.
Yeah.
Once again, good wording on his part, right?
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
wording, yeah.
Yeah, he came to that decision after we had all stood together in the hallway, and Art had like 4 other people from his department with him, his chief deputy
Yeah.
or chief secondary officer, and so on and so forth, and a couple of his detectives.
Jesus
Alex-
Christ.
He had a couple of his guards
all
with him and stuff.
Damn, what
like
is he,
that.
the president?
Well, I mean,
Well, Chief.
Yeah.
Whatever.
yeah.
And we were discussing actually his detectives were discussing how the failure to ID statute in Texas works according to them. I quietly listened, and when they were done, and I looked over and I said, that actually is an incorrect interpretation of the statute.
Mhm.
Your under is wrong.
Because they
And
only go
here's-
by the field manual.
Exactly. And I explained the statute very clearly has 2 specific criteria related to failure to ID, but both of them require one essential element. The individual must already be lawfully arrested or detained for some other
Other reason.
unlawful act.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? In the case of unlawful arrest, the individual could remain or had to give you their name, address, and date of birth. Okay? They couldn't lie about it, and they had to give it to you. But that's all they had to give to you, and they only had to do it verbally. Production of a physical form of ID is not a requirement. Never has been, and it cannot be.
And by
Because
verbal, they
you
can
can't
pull that up
argue
on a
get it.
computer, right? Eddie, like they can pull what you say up on a computer and see your photo, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Now the second one is the lawful detention. You must be lawfully detained for some other offense. In that one, you can't give them false information, but you can refuse to give them any.
That's right.
Unlike the lawful arrest. Now they've rewritten the statute to make it less of an implication for the individual now, and easier for the low IQ individual with a badge to understand. But the fact of the matter is, none of them could get the correct interpretation from the statute as it existed. And so their head man of 30 years experience refused to debate me on air about that statute after that conversation in the hallway at InfoWars.
Oh no, Eddie, he was unprepared.
Yeah. and quite honestly, that was. And whenever I contacted you, I let you know that like that was my credo. It was like, yeah, I'd worked there, and that's where I worked with you previously, and where I was exposed to your absolutely mind-blowing and mind-numbing information about the legal system, traffic stops. That's when I started using a dash cam. Was right after that. And
Shit,
yeah,
I need to get one.
I remember that exact scenario happening, and it was easily a couple months after I'd started working there, and it was interesting to see the fact that he didn't want to have anything to do with that conversation. He didn't want to touch it with a 10-meter cattle prod,
He had already lost it in the hallway. Him and four of his officers.
Yeah.
Against one guy. There's no way he was going to go on a live show and get smeared.
Yeah,
that was not going to happen.
Exactly. And it was, the laws that are there are there literally to protect us. That's what they're written for. They are written to protect our constitutional rights. And unfortunately, the language of legalese lets you actively use that pro or con. You can.
I'm going to interrupt you and ask
Go
you
ahead.
what law are you actually referring to?
Well, I mean, depending on like you said before, depending on the situation, the officer could bend your words any way that you want. That's why you need to just shut up.
True.
The reason I'm asking that is because under the penal code stuff, you're more or less correct. The penal code statutes have to be written more along the lines of common law rights and understanding. Yeah. But the regulatory code stuff, that's a misnomer. Most of those statutes are written to impede the exercise of fundamental rights. For instance, consent. Prior consent to blood draws.
Yes. That's
unconstitutional on its face.
Yeah.
Okay, it absolutely is. And the fact that they say that once consent is given, it can no longer be withdrawn. That, too, that is a fundamental error of
That's
right.
An error.
Can't change my mind?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where I have an issue with the Supreme Court or federal court saying that the states of the union can't separate themselves from the other states and leave the constitutional union. Well, once you're in, it's an indissoluble union. Says who? You can't call me a sovereign state and then tell me I can't
change my mind. Yeah.
You can't be sovereign.
Yeah.
And that's also where constitutional Congress and things like that come in, where it's like, hey, let's call a court and talk about whether or not what's going on is actually constitutionally right between the federal government and the state government.
Well, let's look at the logical idiocy in that statement by a court created by the instrument that they are claiming doesn't give us, the people that wrote it and gave it the power to tear it up and say, no more.
Yeah.
Whether it be one of us, half of us, or all of us.
True.
How asininely ignorant and self-absorbed and self-important do you have to be to have the audacity to declare that the paper document that created the position you hold has no power to tell you to take a freaking hike?
Take a freaking hike.
Well, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true because bounds are overstepped all the time. They're overstepped by officers of the law. And they're overstepped even by the court. A prime example, I was talking about it before the show today. Adam Raposa here locally has
dude, they put him away for a little bit for doing some stuff in court.
Well, and he made an obscene gesture in court, and they put him away for
which I didn't agree with because supposedly it pertained to the.
Here's the issue. You can find somebody in contempt, all right? And he was supposed to show up for court. He didn't. And that's cool.
Right.
So he's got a hearing to come over here and talk about it. Well, the hearing that's going on is being held by a judge that 2 years ago held him in contempt. So technically, the second a judge says, I hold you in contempt, look the word up. That means I don't like you.
What was that word that I'm looking for right now? Yeah,
Like,
that ain't.
like literally, contempt means I don't like you. I
That's-
don't like the way
that's
you
not
look.
the-
I don't like the way you smell. Like,
he's not gonna get
bottom
a fair
point.
trial.
That's not
Yeah.
the right judge.
So-
Bottom point.
so
Yeah.
how is it that
Bottom
this judge who held him in contempt 2 years ago can now stand in not just a trial where there's a jury, but in an actual state where there is just the one magistrate. It's a magistrate court, and it's
No,
just the
that's
one dude.
That's a freaking setup, dude.
And it's
I
like,
mean,
hey, wait
no,
a
you
minute.
don't- you don't
he
do that.
actively doesn't like that guy, so how's it
Yeah.
going to be an impartial
Well,
trial at all?
Exactly. It's not
Now-
going to be a fair trial.
Let me interject something.
Go ahead.
here.
Go ahead.
Being used, you've got it backwards. It depends upon how you're framing the context of the word hold.
True.
I hold you in contempt can be taken one of two ways depending upon the context. I personally don't like you, or I find you guilty of being contemptuous to my authority to
Yes.
do what I have to do under the law.
Yeah, that's true.
They're completely opposite of each other because they go to different parties.
Yeah, they're polar differences of the same word.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly. So, given that, it really depends upon how the judge is intending that to operate versus how he's saying it operates.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you an example of what we were discussing a second ago that led us up to this.
Sure.
In the Texas Constitution, under Article 1, which is our Bill of Rights under our state constitution here in Texas, Article 1, Section 2. Now, pay very close attention to this paragraph when we get to the end of it. Section 2, inherent political power, Republican form of government. That's how that section is titled. All political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. Their being we the people, not the government, not governmental employees, the people. Okay? The faith of the people of Texas stands pledged to the preservation of a Republican form of government and subject to this limitation only. They have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. That means if we the people decide it is more expedient to hang them as traitors than to reelect them with new people, that's our prerogative.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because expedient means right frickin' away, guys.
Yeah.
Okay?
Pronto.
In a manner promptly assuring the protection of individual liberty. And the most prompt method of ensuring the people's rights are protected is to hang the buttholes that would violate those rights. Now, people can say what they want about capital punishment being inhuman and stuff and never fixing the problem. Newsflash, people. I guarantee you anyone subjected to capital punishment is 100% guaranteed never to commit those acts again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true. That's true.
Yeah, well, because they're dead.
Yeah. And there is.
It's going to be against a demon in hell, but it ain't going to be against me.
Well, and just the sheer fact alone of if you would get rid of most of the crimes that people, like we're saying, shouldn't be pulled over for, shouldn't be put in prison for to begin with, then we wouldn't have the overburdened prison system, and we could literally just put those people in prison for life and never, ever, ever let them out.
And we wouldn't have an overtaxed and overburdened
Exactly.
or
Totally.
bloated government or anything of that sort.
And the trick is to get to the point like we're talking about where people know their rights, where people don't subject themselves like I did. People, don't be me. Good God, I can't tell you how many times in life I've told even kids I taught, hey guys, look at what I did in college. Here's my .08 grade point average from one semester. I had a blood alcohol content for my grade point average. Don't do that when you go to college, kids. All right? That's your lesson for the
Crack
day.
open a book.
Actually learn some shit while you're there.
If you really want to do if you want to do a worthwhile study on something, somebody needs to conduct a study that shows that there is a direct correlation between bureaucracy and its ever increasing growth and burden on the people to loss of wealth, poverty, and crime.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
for
are
sure.
directly corollary.
Oh, yeah.
The more you have of one on the government side, the more you have of the other on the people side.
Yeah.
And specifically, people of color and people of lower means.
Yeah.
Well, they are the lowest population to go after in that case, but they're not the only ones that suffer. If you actually look at the true statistics, there are actually more white people killed by cops than there are black people.
Yeah,
There's
it's just
actually
the
more black
percentage
on
is,
black crime
Yeah.
than there is white on black crime.
Yeah. And
Now, I don't pretend to know why that is, but it just is.
yeah.
If you look at all the actual numbers, they're not going to lie to you, unlike the political spin machine.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's a percentage, though, that, like, sure, more white people are killed, but there are fewer black people in the country, so the percentage of black people that are killed is much higher, actually, than the percentage of white people, because there are a lot more white people than black people.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the sheer fact of they're being trained to literally violate all of our rights, every
Yes.
one of us, and my favorite line in your script was quite literally right toward the end of it, where literally one of the last things that you tell the officer is, I think you're trying to fabricate things against me. And I think you may be actually trying to harm my physical person right now.
Well,
I am in fear for my life, and I think that you may
he's
kill
definitely
me.
trying
I
to
like
better.
that one,
He's
like-
definitely trying to better his situation. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I mean, that's definitely
hey.
what he's out for. That's what he's. His,
Well, and it's no different,
Yeah.
like I said,
as soon
than
as he
the,
turns
than
those
the
lights
training.
on and he come up behind
it's,
you.
it's no different than the training that they have that was made fun of in South Park, where it's like, oh my God, that bear's coming right at me. And then
Okay.
you have the right to shoot it because suddenly the bear is coming right at you. And that's the way that they've
I
been
think-
trained.
see,
as
you
long
see-
as there is a perceived threat, they're allowed to
See,
use
you see
force.
all these things going on today, like
Yeah.
the videos on social media and stuff, and people, what people say and stuff, how they, cops treat them and stuff, and you see the videos, right? So, anyways, long story short, like Eddie was saying, early was that they're being trained by the field manual. And then then you got the statute. So now that he's kind of like I've listened to Eddie here, it's like, isn't there an issue here where like it seems like there's two different worlds there, like and they're clashing, and it's like, well, why isn't the police more in tune with the statute rather than the field manual? You know what I mean?
Because that takes a lot
Well,
of money.
I know
to
what you
actually-
mean, but
yeah.
you're assuming that a guy who has a problem unwrapping his toilet paper in the morning has the IQ to understand 99% of what he's reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a reason why the courts ruled that cities can intentionally hire people with lower intelligence over people with higher intelligence to man their police departments.
Yeah.
They want
wow.
order takers,
They want yes
order
men, yeah.
followers.
Yeah.
They do not want critical, analytical thinkers. They don't.
Ah.
A thinker will turn around and challenge what
Right.
he's told
Right.
when he has a moral or ethical issue with it.
They want
That's
they
the-
want a zombie. A zombie would be good, huh?
Well,
Somebody a little
yes
bit
and no.
above a
Yeah.
zombie. They
Yeah,
don't want
okay.
them to
No,
eat their
it would have to be a very aggressive zombie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The one that wants
It would
brains.
have to be what is that? The Brad Pitt zombie
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
It had to be
Exactly.
like-
That one. That
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd have to be some underworld type zombies
Yeah.
or something.
The zombie I was thinking was along that line, anyways. Night of the Living Dead. It wants brains. It's coming
Yeah,
after
yeah.
you. You know what I mean?
Well, and quite literally, it is the fact that, like Eddie said, like Julie was saying, they have lowered the bar.
But basically, the manual they're being trained by is not correct.
well, it's the fact that it's a partial reality.
Right.
Right, if it's open to
It's only-
interpretation, then it
even
shouldn't be.
yeah.
even if they were given the whole statute, they're still not taught how to properly read and understand it.
Exactly.
They're not taught how to take it as a whole.
Right.
See, Texas law, any law, requires that it be read in context and as a whole. The courts refer to that as impera materia.
That's
In other words, for every law and every other law related to the same subject of that one law, they must be considered together before a proper understanding can be obtained.
It sounds
It's that simple.
It sounds like there should be somebody in between to interpret these to relay to the
Well,
PDs.
that's what the cops and the courts are supposed
Yeah.
to be for, but it doesn't work that way
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, and it's just like our guest, our regular ringer in, Dean over here, said, hiring for police in Austin requires the 3 months in police academy over someone with a degree in criminal justice. They would much rather take somebody through 3 months of police academy than someone who's been to like Sam Houston State, one of the best colleges in the country for criminal justice and
Wow.
stuff like
Well,
that.
absolutely. Now, if you really want to get to know a cop, ask him if he's a moral individual or an ethical individual,
Yes.
and then understand what the difference is. For instance, a moral man knows it's wrong to cheat on his wife and doesn't. An ethical man knows it's wrong to cheat on his wife right before he does it.
I'm glad I was thinking moral before the other one. Anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was
true.
going to say, I think the moral one's better.
Officer, are you here to protect my rights as a moral man, or are you here to protect my rights as an ethical man?
Yeah. And it is about confronting them about your rights, letting them know that you know what your rights actively are. As we get ready to close out here, Eddie, what if there were 5 things that you would tell somebody to keep in mind? I mean, of course, let's say rule number 1 is shut up, keep shutting up. All right.
Rule number 1 is always carry recording devices with you.
There you go.
That
There you
is
go.
rule 1. Rule 2 is use them. After
Okay.
that, go wherever you like. But those are the primary 2, always. Don't ever leave your home for the rest of your natural life without something that records audio and video.
Yeah.
Which is pretty easy now with smartphones.
Hey, Eddie, have you seen any of these social media videos lately and anything that really stands out to you and what you can comment on?
I guess it depends on which side of the coin you're talking about. I see very few good ones compared to bad ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are bad ones. You can't throw a stick and not hit a whole plethora of bad ones.
Yeah.
Finding an actual good one in the mix is hard to do.
There
are some that are doing it right, but you'll look for a while before you
I want to say, once in the last year, I posted one on the Dudes and Beer page where an officer came up, did the typical rigmarole. The person gave him the spiel, like, listen, officer, I'm just driving my car. I have, what is the reason you pulled me over? So far as I know, I have no reason. Like, is there...
Are you doing what with your car?
Yeah, I was just driving.
Yeah.
Just going. Just moving.
I said, you doing what with your car?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to drive?
Drive is one of their
Operating?
defined terms.
It is one of their defined terms.
In fact,
So you can't use drive?
Yeah.
The term drive is specifically defined in Chapter 522 of the Texas Transportation Code as what is done in relation to a commercial motor vehicle.
Okay.
So what are you operating it? That sounds very much more like
Nope, operating is for any type of commercial use vehicle that is not specifically a commercial vehicle.
I was moving in a forward
I'm
trajectory
using-
in my car.
I am using my car. That's it.
It's
I'm
using.
traveling in my private
Traveling.
conveyance for my own private business and pleasure.
That's it.
I am exercising my right to liberty through locomotion in my private conveyance. But you're not operating and you're not driving.
Yeah. And those are the terms that you need to use, folks. Those are the things that you need to remember. And, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight, Eddie. Make sure to go on and check out his website, Tao of Law / wordpress.com.
I'll be checking it out.
And also Rule of Law Radio. Where can they go to find Rule of Law Radio? I know I've been listening to it on YouTube.
RuleofLawRadio.com or LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Fantastic.
Now, yeah, we also have a documentary movie that we've gotten completed and is going to be released here soon. It's going to be directly marketed to individual viewers through via social media and numerous other things. But you can check out the trailer on the movie at grandscammovie.com. And you can just go there and you'll see what it's about. It does go toward the financial system and the Federal Reserve, but it gives you information, much more information, and much more detail than anything else that's ever been put out on this subject. I promise you it's not going to be a disappointment.
Fantastic. And I know, like you said earlier, that you are actively working on getting online classes for this going, online classes for your script, your traffic.
Cool.
Classes and turning them into actual online classes where they'll actually be conducted as classes. There will be live presentations, which y'all will be able to watch whoever. And I'm also currently looking to Michael Badnarik and Dave Champion to teach classes on that site with me.
Oh, wow.
They'll be teaching income tax law, constitutional prerequisites and knowledge, along with the law and stuff that I teach, and how to do things for yourself and understand it. So I'm talking with the two of them for all of us to work together to make a lot of information publicly available that isn't available right now, at least not through an easy to get through avenue.
Yeah.
So once this is set up and ready to go, it will be conducted just like any distance learning system on any big university. There will be live presentations and classes. There will be skills assessments and tests, and you must pass one level of testing before you can participate in a higher level class. You can attend a class and you can listen to it, but you can't actively participate or test until you have reached the skill level necessary by exhibiting it through testing in the other ways. And so that will force people into learning the material. Something that I'm having a problem with even after all these years of teaching is finding enough people that actually can absorb the content and put it to use on demand.
Yeah, and I know there have been people there have been people before that have put out like small cards. Even the gentleman in the video that we were talking about on our Facebook
you went
group,
pretty far
he
off
had
the script though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, granted, he didn't have this script.
No.
What he had was
like
a little keychain.
Yeah.
And there are services that sell keychain things. There are services that sell like little envelopes that you just hand out the window to the officer and you just shut your mouth.
Right.
You know, all kinds of stuff. But the information, like even tonight, the in-depth information that Eddie Craig has with the law, with transportation law, and understanding your place directly outside of that system. Like directly outside of that system. Like none of us here, none of us are Uber drivers.
Nope.
If you're an Uber driver, you're bound to transportation law.
Yes,
You are transporting
you should also
people.
have commercial insurance.
You should also have commercial insurance. Absolutely. Contact your local person who provides commercial insurance. We can't say names.
So like in a way, I could like totally like shut the hell up when I get pulled over and have like a certain like amount of stuff written on a card and say, "Hey, I'm not going to talk anymore. This is what I if I was going to talk, this is what I would say." Could I do that?
I mean, you could.
If you wanted to, you could print everything that's in that script on
right. Like that.
3.5 by 5 index cards and just hold them up to the window for him to read.
Oh,
right.
nice.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Straight ahead. As far as he knows,
the
you're
only problem
a
there
deaf
is if you
mute.
ever drop them or have to access them out of order. Then there's a lot of shuffling.
You gotta put them on a keychain.
That's
so that
what
they
a
don't fall out of
tablet is
order.
for, Eddie. That's what mobile
Yeah,
devices
but you
are
haven't
for.
tried pressing that tablet up against a rolled up window.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
true, that's
yeah.
true.
I was
like
thinking.
tinted
I was thinking about that.
heavy.
What's that you're holding in your hand? I feel threatened.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah, right.
Yes, but see, every
Send
time
my
they say and
camera.
do shit like that, it's like
Holding
really?
anything, officer. That's
Yeah.
just one finger.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Are you just making an excuse to grab your gun? Because
Well,
literally,
and
if you were
once-
at home where you really feel threatened by
Once again, Eddie, please tell everybody where they can go to see the trailer for the film, where they can go to find stuff for Tower of Law, where they can go to find Rule of Law Radio.
The movie trailer is at grandscammovie.com. My legal blog is at taoflaw, taoflaw.wordpress.com. My radio show can be listened to on logosradionetwork.com or ruleoflawradio.com, which will actually link you back over to Logos now. So you can go to any of those addresses and get access to the information that I put out there for folks. Everything on the blog is free information. A lot of it is part of the information that's going into my revision 2.0 of the traffic seminar that we sell to help fund the network. The traffic seminar is the cheapest legal education you're ever going to get on this subject.
Absolutely.
It contains more than 400 different legal pleadings that I prepared for you to basically study, edit as needed when you need to use them if you get a ticket, and how to use them, along with the book I wrote that explains what the transportation laws are and how they actually apply. That's getting a rewrite as well. There's lots and lots and lots of information in the seminar, some of which that we put together and some of which I just collected from other sources that establish the do's and the don'ts of what to do in these cases.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean, literally, that's the first 3 pages of the script, folks. Out of a 7-page script, the first 3 pages are do's and don'ts. Like, don't do this.
Yeah,
Whatever
don't
you
roll your
do,
window down.
don't
There's
do
gonna be
this.
more
Don't do
don'ts.
this.
Definitely
There's
more
a
don'ts.
whole lot more don'ts.
Yeah, I
than
was going to
do's.
say, there's more.
A whole lot
yeah.
more. And
the thing to remember about
Less
the
is
script
more.
is it's entirely meant as far as the things you actually say and do in relation to the officer.
yeah,
The script is meant to be memorized
that's
so
right.
that you can instantly access whatever part of it you need from memory just by understanding what is being asked of you and knowing how your rights are to be invoked in relation to that demand.
And that's exactly what the classes are for. They actively train you in that, in parts and everything
Right.
else.
Because a cop's not going to be patient with you if you're sitting there
Yeah.
flipping through these 7 pages trying to find what you're supposed to say.
Yeah.
The script is meant to be practiced. You need to internalize everything that's on it, both so you understand what to do and why you're doing it, and then what to actually say and to actually do to ensure that all the do's and don'ts help you instead of hurt you.
That's right. And if you want a copy of that script, folks, please do visit taoflaw.com or taoflaw/wordpress.com. So sorry. As well as the Dudes and Beer Knowledge Vault. Just go to dudesandbeer.com, go to the Knowledge Vault tab, and we've got all kinds of stuff there.
Oh, we got a knowledge
There's-
vault?
Oh, dude, it's
There's
insane.
some
Not
crazy
only do
stuff
we
in
have
there.
stuff that, not only do we have that, we have like scientific patents for stuff that we talk about here on the show, like HARP. All the Tesla patents are there. You can go, and there are all kinds of
An electric
declassified government documents, declassified government programs. We're getting ready for a whole declassification month coming up.
I'm there,
trying
dude.
to plan out.
I was not privy
Yeah,
to
you
this.
Guys, yeah. Well, I mean,
Julie,
they're
You can also get a copy of the script, which is the one I keep updated the most, on the Logos website, logosradionetwork.com
Nice.
yes.
/TAO. And not only is the transportation script there, but there is actually a court practice script on there with it as well. That page will also tell you about my plans for the future website, taooflaw.com, that we've been developing for
Yes.
years. It's going to be the most extensive site of the kind it will be that's ever existed.
What's there is already absolutely amazing and phenomenal, man. I have been going through it for the last many days.
And can I ask Eddie real fast while he's on the air? What made you get into all this, Eddie? What made you want to do all this?
Well, the first thing that actually got me involved in it was the county tried to steal my mother's house and land by illegally taxing her, inconsistent with the manner the law required. When I found out what they were doing and how they were doing it, I immediately went to the tax code and started dissecting it, and found out that they weren't supposed to be taxing her at all. They had actually defrauded her out of tens of thousands of dollars illegally. And so I went down to the county tax assessor. I showed him what I had, and I told him if he ever sent another notice to my mother, I would sue him into destitution beyond his imagination.
Right.
And I had the means to do it at the time. I was working as a computer consultant, traveling all over the country, so I had deep pockets at that time, and I could have done it.
Hell yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Once you find the cause in life, once you find the thing that you know you have to fight for, just like you said, once you were involved in working in the jails as a sheriff, you saw people that just didn't know better than to cooperate, didn't know better than to just do what the police said to do when it was actually a direct violation of their rights. And that's what brought you to writing this script, coming up with this course, coming up with all of this great material that is there. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show tonight. We'd love to have you as well as the other hosts of Rule of Law on whenever we talk about stuff like this, Eddie.
Okay. Well, if you'll just give us a heads up as far in advance as you can, let us
Sure
know.
thing.
Then
because this was
available. We'll work with you to get it done.
This was probably as spitballed together as an episode as I've ever done. Like even in my broadcast days, where I think we got in contact on Saturday afternoon or something like that. You know, and
the major difference between that and most things is that this is what I live, eat, and breathe.
Exactly.
I have this so internalized that I'm a walking manual all by myself. And I'm not trying to say that to brag.
Beer,
it just is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. Once you, like I said, once you find it, you can't not do it. And the fact that you help so many people with their cases. I know a couple people that you have actively helped with their cases. So, and the work that you do is fantastic. The stuff that y'all are doing on Rule of Law Radio is awesome. And what you're doing with Tower of Law WordPress is just great.
Yeah, well, since you were at InfoWars when I did that presentation, you know that 2.5 hours that I did was actually recorded in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And most of that was for Rob to set up his equipment and get everything put into the computer.
Yeah.
That was going to be displayed as notes for the viewer, not for me.
Yeah.
Everything I did in that presentation was 100% from memory. Everything.
I was going to say, you got a good damn memory, I can tell.
And that's just it. It's there. It's case. It's citation. Yeah. It's the exact law.
And what I love about it is that it's being put to good use.
Well, and it's being put to the proper use. It's being put to the use that it was written for.
Yeah, it was intended
and that's
for.
just it.
You know what I mean?
Once again, thank you so much for coming on this evening, Eddie. I can't wait until we have you on again.
Yeah, Eddie, man, it was great.
Godspeed with the documentary. Everybody make sure to go to thegrandscammovie.com.
No, not the.
Oh,
just
sorry. Just grandscammovie.com. Okay, grandscammovie.com. Check out the trailer for that there. And until next time, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dudes and Beer podcast. Thank you so much for continuing to listen, downloading the app, everything else. It's been a great 125 episodes so far.
Oh, yeah? Are we on the 125?
This was 125.
One and a quarter.
Hold on with this real quick, Eddie, and we'll let you go. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Love you guys.
Until next time, everybody, if you can't be good, be good at it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer podcast. To listen to our audio streams and chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for both Android and iDevices, available on the Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.